Hi, it's Brad Stone with the Monocacy National Battlefield Foundation, doing another fabulous video from Baltimore Harbor. And many of you may be asking, well, what does Baltimore Harbor have to do with the Battle of Monocacy? Well, actually quite a bit, because we're going to talk to famed and beloved naval historian Dr. Alexa Price, who is with the historic ships in Baltimore, to talk about how the Navy commissioned two ships by the name of the Monocacy. Now, one thing I'd just like to quickly point out, I think, Alexa, this is one of the rare occasions where the Navy named ships after what was technically a defeat for U.S. Armed Forces, or in this case, the Union Army at the Battle of Monocacy. Technically, it was a tactical defeat for Union forces at that battle, but it was a success in terms of being a delaying action that allowed the Union to gain one crucial day that helped reinforce the forts surrounding Washington, D.C., and prevented the Confederate forces of Jubal Early from capturing Washington, D.C. So I think in that sense, even though technically it's a defeat, at least the people in 1864 and later on considered it to be a victory. And so with no further ado, I'm going to leave it to Dr. Price to talk about the ships that were named after the Battle of Monocacy.
Thank you, Dr. Brad. So we are here in Baltimore Harbor, which, as Dr. Brad says, does fit into the story of Monocacy in the name of the ship. And also, we're going to talk about the first Monocacy, which actually was built here in Baltimore. When I say the first Monocacy, I mean the first ship, the Monocacy, was built down the river, further down the Baltimore Harbor here in 1864, which is about 5 years after Constellation. Well, Constellation was built elsewhere. So it's a similar era. The Monocacy as a gunboat was designed to travel shallow water areas. This first Monocacy had a draft, I believe, about 9 feet. So it was able to cross the ocean, but once it got there, it was also suitable for patrolling rivers. And the U.S. at this time was very interested in conducting what we now call gunboat diplomacy, so showing naval force not just at sea, but in rivers to encourage foreign nations to recognize the U.S. And also maybe conduct trade. So the first USS Monocacy was sent overseas to what was called the U.S. Asiatic Squadron at the time, and first of all just started patrolling mostly the Yangtze River in China, and also was helping make new naval charts. Now at this point, the U.S. had established trade relations with China, and also through another display of force with Japan, and was looking for perhaps suitable places to build lighthouses and aids to navigation, so merchants participating in trade could use those to help get around. So that's what the Monocacy was doing when it first went overseas, but in 1871 was sent on a special mission to Korea. Now, at this time, Korea was an isolationist nation, but the U.S., again, conducting gunboat diplomacy, had hopes that, like China and Japan, by some displays of naval prowess, perhaps Korea would also open itself up to U.S. trade. But what actually prompted the Monocacy to go there in 1871 was something called the General Sherman Incident. There was a merchant ship a few years previously called the SS General Sherman, which had been carrying goods that they bought from a British firm in China to Korea, hopefully to sell those goods from a U.S. merchant vessel. But to Americanize, it seemed like that vessel had disappeared. So Monocacy was going with a few other ships of the Asiatic Squadron to figure out what had happened. What had happened, we now know, is that when the General Sherman had gotten there, they had been told that the ship could not proceed down the Han River as it approached Hanyang, which is now modern-day Seoul. But either through misunderstanding or ignoring what they were supposed to be doing, they proceeded down the river, potentially ran aground, and after an altercation, the ship was actually torched by Korean fire ships. This news did not leave Korea, however, and so the Americans at the time didn't know what had happened. So much like the General Sherman, when Monocacy got to Korea, it was also told it could not proceed downriver, couldn't approach the capital, and Korea wasn't interested in having this foreign influence at the time. However, while talks were ongoing, Monocacy and another gunboat, the USS Palos, proceeded closer to Ganghwa Island and took fire from fortifications on the shore. So at this point, Admiral John Rogers declared that this was now a punitive mission. So over the next few days, the Battle of Ganghwa Island took place. And this was when the Monocacy and the Palos bombarded several of the Korean forts on the shore, supposedly again in retaliation for having been fired upon before. The battle went on for several days, the Korean fortifications taking over 240 casualties, in contrast to the American about 10. The U.S. sailors and Marines eventually went ashore and captured several of the forts temporarily, one of which was actually then named Fort Monocacy, again very temporarily before these forts were dismantled. Ultimately, the U.S. ships eventually left. They decided that this was technically what they considered a victory, but upon realizing that despite the show of force, Korea was not going to open up to American trade, they eventually left, and trade wasn't opened with Korea until several years later, actually by Japanese treaties with the country. So in 19th century American terms, this was called the Expedition to Korea. Koreans know it as the Shinmyeongyo, which is the Western disturbance in the Shinmi year. And it stands as an example as to how the U.S. really wanted to assert itself on the global stage after the Civil War, both economically and in terms of naval strength.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Price, for that great analysis of the first USS Monocacy. We're going to do a subsequent video on the second USS Monocacy. So for those of you interested, I remind you again, it really helps if you subscribe to our channel. The other thing is, if you're really interested about the role of the Navy in the U.S. Civil War and in subsequent conflicts, I advise you to come down to the historic ships in Baltimore. You'll see not only the USS Constellation, but other ships like the Submarine Tourist and the what used to be called the Tawny, the Coast Guard cutter.
The Coast Guard cutter number 37.
Now known as the Coast Guard cutter number 37. And anyway, of course, we're very happy to continue bringing these videos about all things Monocacy. So until then, take care.